It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, YouTube and baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, the YouTube channel. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today is Friday the 13th of August, 2021, and we are going to be previewing what should be a wild weekend of baseball games. And who is we? Well, you know who I am. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. We are bringing aboard, here he is, Lucas Smith of Locked On Cardinals. How you doing, buddy?
I am good, and you are right. It's going to be an exciting weekend of baseball. We're in the dog days of August. You might be thinking, no, baseball's kind of boring. No, we've got an exciting, jam-packed action of baseball, and I'm looking forward to breaking it down.
Well, if you're watching this video, you don't think baseball is boring.
You do not.
You're with us. You're with us. You're one of these people who would be following us at Locked On MLB Pods, and you know baseball is great because we are getting down to there's less than 50 games in the year, and some of the pennant races are tightening up. We have a weekend of games that are coming up, and we had the fun spectacle, but now we've got to get back to business of baseball. And so we are seeing a couple of things happening in the league right now. Unfortunately for you, they don't really involve the Cardinals that much.
Not necessarily, no.
But we're seeing that there's potential chaos in the National League East, where one game is separating three teams from the top, with the Mets beating up the Nationals and the Reds clobbering the Braves. The Phillies wound up stealing one win from Los Angeles. But now those three teams are separated by one game. And why I find that race to be so intriguing is that it is, well, there's no wild card for those teams to fall back on.
No.
So this is going to be a real, true pennant race, a race of mediocrity, but only one of them is going to make the postseason. And so what do you think is going to happen there, especially as the Mets are playing LA, which is going to be a tall order for them. Meanwhile, I forgot who the Braves are going to be playing the Nationals, and the Nationals are depleted right now. And the Philadelphia Phillies are playing the Reds, who are tough and breathing down the neck of San Diego. What do you think is going to happen there this weekend?
Well, the Braves had to have the best shot this weekend among those three. But, I mean, really, with how long the Mets have been on this kind of slump and how long it took Philadelphia and Atlanta to kind of make some noise, you didn't think anybody actually wanted to win the NL East. But this weekend, particularly, looking at those matchups, and again, I don't have any of the probables, but just knowing those teams, I think the Braves come out of this weekend in first place. I think that the Braves take 2 out of 3 over the struggling Nationals. I really like the Reds a lot. I don't like it when they win and Jeff Carr gets to brag about it, but I do like the Reds team a lot, and I think that the Dodgers are just going to be unstoppable. I don't really see too many teams winning series against them here on out, especially now that the Dodgers actually have to fight to stay in a playoff spot, or at least to stay ahead of the Padres, so they still have motivation to win, if you will. So I think that the Braves come out on top. I think that they're the only NL East team that wins a series this weekend. And as much as I would like to see the Reds lose and the Cardinals somehow miraculously get back into the playoff hunt, I don't see that happening. And, I did not see the Braves doing this, but credit to where credit is due. Braves lost Acuna Jr., and they revamped their outfield. They got Soler, Rosario, Peterson, and Duvall. They went out, and they didn't make a huge splash. They didn't get a Trey Turner or a Max Scherzer, but they did what they needed to do to improve their team when other teams didn't, and that's why I think the Braves are going to be set up nice down the stretch.
I can't agree with you more. The fact that they made moves when nobody would have had an issue if they sold. They said, look, we lost our MVP candidate. We're a sub 500 team at the trade deadline. Let's just trade away anyone who's going to be a free agent, not do a complete teardown, but say, okay, whose contract is running up? Let's get a couple of minor leaguers back for them and call it a year. And instead they made, as you said, low risk, high reward moves. that basically said, hey, if this doesn't work, Jock Peterson didn't cost us our best prospect. But they made moves that said, well, wait a minute. Let's make sure that if our outfield doesn't include an MVP candidate, let's make sure it's at least okay, that it's not a weakness. And they also looked around and said, like, the Mets haven't run away from this yet, and they are the Mets. So let's, if the Mets had gone off and, had like a 7-8 game lead at the All-Star break, if they had a decent series against Pittsburgh, if they swept Pittsburgh and they had a couple extra games, I don't think the Braves make the move.
Yeah.
And instead, here we are. By the way, the other race, which is interesting because it's not as interesting as the East because there's wild cards for these teams to fall back on. But the Dodgers don't want to play a one-game playoff because they could easily lose a one-game playoff. And they're 5 games back of San Francisco. Taking 2 out of 3 from Philadelphia isn't good enough. It's not good enough. And when you take a look at the fact that the Dodgers have a horrible extra inning record.
Yeah.
And they have a horrible one-run game record. If they were merely mediocre in extra innings, they'd be in first place right now. And here we are with people like, oh, they've got Scherzer, they've got all these embarrassment of riches for the Dodgers. Yeah, guess what? They're playing the Mets. The Mets are a team with a winning record. The Mets aren't a bad team. And the Giants are going to be feasting on the Rockies. And so it's a 5-game lead they have. And yes, there's still a month and a half to play, but 5 games is a lot to make up, especially since everyone has expected the Giants to fall apart, and they haven't.
That's a great point. I mean, for the entire year, I've heard nothing but, oh, the Giants aren't that good. They're going to fall apart. They're just a band of misfits toys that are having a nice season. They're the first team to 70 wins, and they continue to win, and they got better at the trade deadline. And for all the crap that this MLB playoff format can get at times, in my opinion, it did exactly what it was meant to do. It was meant to put more emphasis on winning your division, and that's exactly what teams want to do. Because if you don't win your division, like you mentioned, you got a one-game playoff. And I don't think anybody, whether you have Max Scherzer or Taijuan Walker, wants to play in that one-game playoff. Right. So this playoff format does, in my opinion, exactly what it was meant to do. And right now the Dodgers are really, really struggling to try and get above that hump, above the Giants. Because not only have the Giants played well, they've played well against the Dodgers. That's the biggest key to me, is that the Giants are beating up on the teams like the Rockies, the Diamondbacks, like they're supposed to. But they're also beating the best team in the Dodgers. And that's where the great teams separate themselves from the pretty good teams, is beating the teams within your division and beating the good teams within your division.
Now, there's a couple other points I'm going to make around the league as we preview this weekend. The hottest team in baseball, quietly, are the Oakland A's, who just made mincemeat out of the Cleveland Indians. They had some dramatic come-from-behind games. They had some blowout games. And they're going to be playing the minor league team that plays in Texas this weekend. Meanwhile, the Astros are going to the Angels. Now, the Angels are hardly world beaters. They're 1 game under 500 as we're recording this. But they're not as bad as the Rangers, and they're at home, and they have a little thing called pride. And the A's right now are only 1.5 games out of first place, going to play a lousy team that has traded away all their best players. Now, the Rangers gave the Mariners fits recently. I think the A's are better than the Mariners, and the A's certainly have better pitching than the Texas Rangers do at this point. And they could make a real run at that division. And trust me, the Astros do not want to play a 1-game playoff, but neither do the A's at this point.
No, I think, the common theme you're going to find, I don't think anybody wants to play a 1-game playoff because your odds aren't too good there. But yeah, I think that the A's have a real shot to be in first place. And, for all the postseason struggles the A's have had throughout the years of the Billy Bean, the Moneyball teams of losing in back-to-back Game 5 the ALDSs, losing in 2012 in the ALDS to the Tigers, the wild card team in 2018, I think it was, or 19 against the Yankees, and then the Rays. And then last year, yes, they beat the White Sox in the opening round, but then they got thumped the round after that. I think it would be great for the Athletics to say, hey, Oakland, we're still here and we're still a good baseball team. And that would just be a great storyline to maybe convince Oakland to keep them in Oakland if the A's could find a little bit more postseason success in 2021.
A couple more things. Your Cardinals are playing the Royals in a series that would mean a lot if you had a time machine and took you back to 2015. That would be great. If you can invest in that time machine, that'd be a really terrific series. The late Don Denkinger will not be there. The East is going to include the Red Sox are going to be playing Baltimore, which the Orioles are beyond horrible, which means the Orioles are going to win that series. I just have the sense.
Yeah.
I have the sense that's going to happen. It makes no sense, but that's just the way it is. Tampa is going to play Minnesota, and Minnesota is not very good. So that does not loom well for the Red Sox. The Blue Jays are going to be playing Seattle, and Seattle got a great performance from Gonzalez today. And they're a winning team. They're a winning team, and they're not going to win the wild card. And the Blue Jays certainly have images of a wild card dancing in their head right now. But that'll be a tough series for them. And of course, the Yankees are going to continue their series against the Chicago White Sox. And while they're not all going to end with the drama that we saw today, White Sox are such a good team. They're a super tough team, and I don't know. I think they'll give the Yankees fits.
I agree. I think the teams that you just mentioned, I'm most excited to see Toronto. I think that I'd love to see the Rays win the AL East, but to me, Toronto is just such a young and fun team. They've got a couple veterans mixed in there, but they've got the 3 or 4 sons of major leaguers, which is a great storyline. I've always loved the Blue Jays and what they've been about, and I think that it would be great for them to get in the wild card, maybe crash a postseason party, because that's a young and exciting team. And I think they're too young enough to know they're not really supposed to be there, so they're just going to be there anyways. And I think if you get them in the postseason, they could cause some chaos.
They're 2 games out, but they're tied in the loss column with the Red Sox for the second wild card spot. And even though they're on the outside looking in, the Blue Jays, they are the one team, and I mentioned this on a previous episode, they are the one team that I think all of the American League wants to avoid. That nobody wants to play the Blue Jays in a short series, because I think I equated this year's American League with the National League of 2007, where the top seeded team were the Diamondbacks that year with 90 wins and a negative run differential, and basically 4 or 5 games separated home field advantage in the National League Championship Series and not making the playoffs. And I think that same thing's going to happen in the American League, that there's not a 100-win team. There's not going to be the runaway champion, runaway favorite in the postseason. And a team like Toronto could be like that 2007 Rockies team, which was a team that, was on the periphery of contention, got hot at the right time, went on an outrageous final 2 weeks, and then wound up in the World Series because they were hot at the right time. And the Blue Jays just strike me as a team that may not have the best record, but once they get into the postseason, they may pull a 2006 Cardinals.
Yeah,
where it was the Cardinals were far from the best team in that year's postseason, and yet they hit the aft thrusters. 2 straight years, the National League pennant winner was the team that just happened to get hot at the right time.
Yep.
Actually 3 if you count the Astros in 2005. So it tended to be a trend. I think you're going to see that in the American League. As good as the White Sox look right now, I think they look terrific. The last inning by Hendricks notwithstanding, I think that if the Blue Jays got in, they would be terrifying for every single team, because they are filled with so much talent and they do not care. They don't care.
Totally agree. It's going to be a fun and exciting race on every front. I think really the only division that is short up right now is the National League and American League. The only 2 divisions. There's the National League and American League Central. As much as I would love to see the Reds or Cardinals make a push, I think the Brewers pitching is too good, and the AL Central is pretty bad outside of the Chicago White Sox. So that's 4 other divisions up for grabs, plus the 4 wildcard spots, 2 in each league. So I think we're in for as exciting as 2020 was, and we had the extra postseason spots. I think you're in for as just an exciting end to 2021.
And it's more exciting with a full year, because you get to see the ebbs and flows.
I agree.
Baseball should have the long season because you have those moments where things feel great and they feel bad. You've had the injuries and the new people filling in and the trades, and you get to know the players. There's someone you experience day in and day out. Just like anyone who subscribes to Locked On Cardinals can find out day in and day out. Where can people follow you, Lucas Smith?
They can follow me on Twitter. My personal is at LJFastball, and the show is on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Cardinals. Feel free to email the show anytime at lockedoncards@gmail.com. You can also find the show on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. And the YouTube debut of Locked On Cardinals is Friday. So be sure to head over to Locked On Cardinals on YouTube, hit the subscribe button for the first show. And whether you're watching or listening, I hope you enjoy it.
And that's fantastic. I can't wait to see this. As for us, you can follow us, as it says in the caption below. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On MLB Pods. Now, as for me, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at Sully Baseball and on Instagram at Sully Baseball Podcast, talking about the Field of Dreams game and a preview for what should be a really exciting weekend of baseball with Lucas Smith of Locked On Cardinals. This has been Locked On MLB for the 12th day of August 2021. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Lucas, what can people call me?
They can call you Sully.
All right.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.